I am Chastity Craft. I'm a literacy consultant here at KBEC, and we're going to be going through some reading and writing strategies. And the point of today, because it's a short amount of time, so what I wanted to do is give you some resources and some just some simple strategies that we're going to practice, and you can actually take those strategies tomorrow and start implementing them into your own classroom if you wanted to. So the first thing, just real quick, we're going to review the 5 components of reading, and then we're going to implement those literacy strategies that you can help with students. So we're going to address today reading fluency, word choice, and reading comprehension. So let's look at this, the 5 pillars of early literacy is what we call it. So just out of curiosity, are you guys familiar with the 5 components of reading? And the reason I ask is because if you are, we're just going to kind of do a review, but if not, I will go into a little bit more in depth about it. So in 2000, which looking back, that's 22 years ago, but you know, when I think about that, it's not actually that long, but 22 years ago, and this research still stands to be true, is the National Reading Panel identified 5 key areas for reading, or early literacy, we call it. I like this graphic that they use because each of the pillars is supporting the overall reading comprehension that ultimately we need. We need to be completely literate. We have to read and write it, but these are all the foundational skills that lead up to. And as we talk more, or as we get into different areas of the reading, we're going to find that if any of these pillars are lacking or even weak, then it affects all the rest of it, and the overall reading comprehension, or the overall level of students' reading ability is affected. And what we want to look at sometimes is if a kid is not comprehending a text, is it a comprehension problem, or is it one of these other early foundations? So let's talk about those just real quick. So the first one is phonemic awareness. That is the absolute basic foundation for reading. That typically is taught or learned like preschool age range, or even a little bit before, because when they're toddlers and they're hearing the conversation and those type of things, phonemic awareness is being able to hear the different sounds and hear the different words being spoken. It has nothing to do with the print. It's just being able for me to identify when I say, how are you today? Those are how are you today, that those are 4 separate words, being able to hear that distinction. That falls under phonemic awareness. So that starts early, you know, in development. And that is a big piece. And then it also with sounds, when you hear, if even as a toddler or you know, a preschool kid, if they can hear that cat has 3 sounds in it, they may not know yet that it's a C and an A and a T, but if they can hear that there's 3 different sounds, that's phonemic awareness. And that is the foundation of being able to build on these other concepts. Because the next one is phonics. They have to be able to hear the sounds in order to know to know the phonics piece. So the phonics is the actual written letter that goes to the sound. So phonemic awareness is sounds only. The phonics is knowing that I can hear the sound of k, and I know that the letter C is a representation of that sound of k, and I know how to form that letter. So that's phonics, the letter sound association. And then that also goes into decoding. So if they are aware of the sounds, the letters and the sounds, and then they practice blending those sounds together and being able to separate them and blend them and using those decoding strategies, then that leads into your fluency section. And fluency is important because when kids, and I'm sure you guys have seen this too, if they have those decoding strategies, but if there's a reading passage that they're trying to figure out how, answer questions or even just to read it, if they are focusing so hard on pronouncing each word individually, they're going to lose the concept of what that sentence is. So for example, if the sentence says, mom went to the store, okay, if they have to go, mom, it, and then to is a sight word. So to the magic E makes the O say its name, or store. So if they're having to do that all the way through to figure out, and they're focusing so hard on those decoding to know what those words are, they're not going to comprehend that mom went to the store, because they focus so hard on figuring out what those words are. So the fluency piece is practice, 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 and know how to decode those words and recognize those words and do those fluently, and that builds your fluency. And then vocabulary. There's another one is, you may have students that has the fluency and can decode and can read well, but they don't understand the words. They don't know, they don't have an expansive vocabulary. So for example, if we have, I know in a lot of, sometimes they say stuff. If they're writing, they'll say, or things, I want to get these things, or mom went and got stuff, because they don't really know what some vocabulary words to fill that in. And if they are reading about a koala bear, for example, and if they don't know what a koala is, then they're not going to, it's going to hinder their comprehension, because they don't know what it's talking about. So learning vocabulary words. And then also, this is important, it's important in stories, but especially when in math class or science or social studies class, if you were in a social studies class and they're reading something about the parliament, and they have no, they can sound it out and decode that word, but they have no clue what that word means, they're not going to understand what that is. They're not going to get that comprehension piece, and they're going to miss that comprehension question or that discussion in class, because they don't know what that means. So that's why the vocabulary piece is important. Same with the science. If they don't understand what a cell, if they can pronounce the word cell, but they don't know what that is, it's going to impede their comprehension. So that's why vocabulary is important. And then ultimately the comprehension piece. So that's the most advanced piece of the literacy. So you see how all of these build and support each other for the overall comprehension. And then you will have some weaknesses in comprehension. You're going to have students that can have a basic understanding of these four, but then they will have difficulty with the comprehension as well. So there's also strategies to help organize their thinking and being able for them to identify and pull out things for comprehension strategies. Any questions or comments about the 5 pillars of literacy, or the 5 sometimes it's called 5 components of reading, or pillars, any of those 5 components of reading? Any questions, thoughts, comments, or? Okay, so you guys are going to get some resources today. Okay, these books are phenomenal if you are not familiar with them. Let's look at let's just go ahead and look at the reading one first. They're by, of course, the same author. They're set up the same way, but these are all evidence-based strategies that they're simple. You can it's the book itself I love, because it's not one of these that you have to read front to back. So what you do is you can look at, if you want to turn on page 6, on page 6, it has these little bubbles here, and it kind of describes how this book is laid out. and how it's used. So what I like about it is when you look on the side, let me turn to one that we're going to be using here just a little bit. If you, the first one of the activities that we're going to do is on page 116. So if you look at it, it will tell you who it's for. So the levels it is. Now these are in letter. The levels are lettered. So what you do is you can look in the back on page, and I know I'm flipping you everywhere, but on page 378, there's an appendix, and it tells you the grade level that corresponds with the letter level that's in the book. So for example, the one that we're going to be working on is levels, it starts at level E. So this one would be first grade. It starts at first grade level. So it kind of gives you an idea of where it is. But going back, I'm going to put you back for the front. What I like about this is when at the beginning of each chapter, so we're going to be looking at chapter 4 today, this one. So on page 104 is the beginning of chapter 4. So this one is teaching fluency. Now, of course, I have mine marked, but it will tell you why this goal is important at the beginning before you get into it. So it has teaching fluency. So we're going to be looking at phrasing and automaticity and why is this goal important? So it gives you a little spiel. It talks about why it's important. And then the question, how do I know if this goal is right for my student? So it gives you an indication of what is coming in this chapter so you can easily decide, is this what I need to use with my students? Or which students do I need to use this with? So it tells you that. And then you turn the page and then it has like a little table of contents for each chapter. So it has the strategies listed. It has your levels here. So you don't have to keep flipping through the book. You can just go to the content page. It tells you the levels, the genre that you need, and also the skill. So if you wanted to work on automaticity or if you want to work on phrasing, you can just skim down here and pick one and go over and see which strategy that you want to use. So every chapter is set up just like this. And then if you want to look at, and I did not go in order, but I get really excited. I go to those reading levels first. So if you want to go back to the main front at the original table of contents, what it does is they call them goals. Well, I call them a chapter, but each chapter is a goal. So you can look in the front and decide what you want to work with your kids. So if you're looking at pre-emergent and emergent readers, that's at the very, very beginning. It's goal 1. Okay. And then if you want to focus on stamina, or if you want to do fluency or comprehension and fiction, comprehension and nonfiction. So you can flip through these goals and decide what you want to do. So today, what I did to get ready for this particular training is when I looked at those pillars of literacy, and I looked at phonemic awareness and phonics, and I said, well, you know, we have a whole other training that we focus on those 2 areas. It's called structured literacy, and that is all about phonemic awareness and phonics. So I thought, well, I'm going to use today, and I'm going to focus on fluency, vocabulary, and reading comprehension. So that kind of gives you a tie-in to all of it. So me knowing that, I went to my table of contents, and I go and I say, okay, so on goal 4 is fluency. So I knew that's where I wanted to go to. So I didn't have to dig through that whole book. And then of course in the comprehension, then I looked and I said, okay, do I wanted to do plot and setting? Did I want to do comprehension and character development? You know, what did I want to work on? And these with your kids, sometimes it depends on the level of comprehension. Sometimes they need to know key main idea and key details, and there's a section for that. Sometimes they need to know theme, or sometimes they need to know like using text features. It depends on what skill that your kid needs. And then those are all separated into these goals. The big thing, the big picture for you to know how to use it is you can look at your table of contents and flip through the page and not have to read it front to back. So that was the takeaway from that. Let's look at the writing one, and then we will get into our activity. So the writing one is set up the same way. However, the difference is with the writing, the levels are actually numbered instead of lettered. So you don't need the table to show you what it means. So if you wanted to look at the table of contents in the main front, so these are all writing strategies. Okay, and it starts with the lower one, composing with pictures. If you want like collecting ideas, focus on the meaning, and it goes into organization and structure of writing, and word choice, which falls under vocabulary, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing an activity out of this word choice category, and the reason I did that one is because, like, again, I go back to those pillars of literacy. I wanted to address vocabulary, which falls under reading. However, word choice also is a writing strategy that corresponds with vocabulary. So we're working on that. And then you have your conventions of writing, punctuation and grammar, and then it goes on through the whole thing. So it addresses all pieces of writing that you would need, depending on what skill that you're working on with your child, or whatever their lesson would be at the time. Let's go ahead and look at one of these pages here. On page 279, it's set up the same way. It has the title at the top. Who is this for? So the activity that we're going to be doing today it says levels 3 through 8. So those are grade levels. So this will be 3rd grade through 8th grade. Now, I will say that, because I know, do we have any middle high school people in here? No? Okay. Any middle high school online? What I will say, just in case there are, these books, as far as levels, at 8th grade is the highest that it goes to. But if you have students that are at the high school level, you can still utilize these strategies, because we as special education teachers if we're working with high school students, they are typically not on the high school level. So these strategies will still work for those older kids. So you can, and sometimes even with, like, this one's 3rd grade, you can modify it down for your lower kids. So this one that we're going to be looking at, you can do this for any type of writing, and this would be to practice drafting or revising. And this is looking at vocabulary and word choice to kind of, and what this does is increase their vocabulary, which increases their comprehension, and also improve their writing all at the same time. Okay, so the next thing is the reading fluency. Like I said, we're going to focus on that one is next, because our phonemic awareness and phonics we're not going to focus on that today. We're going to start with reading fluency. So the one that we're going to do is Partners Help Smooth It Out. And that is on page 116 in your reading strategies book. If you want to turn there. Okay, so what you would, if you can see here, if you have the book, you can see the little visual. So what I also like about these strategies is that she always puts like this visual. So it's like chart paper that you can draw as a reminder, and you can just stick it on your wall. Sometimes the visuals are just as a reminder. Sometimes you're going to have chart paper that they work through, and then it's an activity that they can do. So either way, it's just when they work through with the chart paper, then they can have that as a resource to look at, to refer to later. So I'll give you a chance to look at that. And then we're going to use Alex and Amanda's first concert. Now, the story is a little bit long. We don't have to you don't have to read the whole thing really, but what we want to do is talking about, so we're focusing on reading fluency with this one. And again, like I said, this one, it says levels E through G. So E was 1st grade, I think. So they have to be able to decode, at least decode. So we're going to, no, we're not assuming, we have assessed and we know that the students that we're going to do this with are able to decode, and that this is where they are. So if you look at this, it tells you the strategy, what the intent is, okay? And so you can partner them up and they read together with one voice. Now, that's not going to happen at the beginning perfect. It's not meant to. So what you do is you have these little prompts here. And this is what I like also about this book. So it has prompts, and these are questions for you as a teacher as you're walking around and observing your kids in your in their groups on how to ask those questions to get them to do the thinking and to get them to be able to recognize what they need to fix. And that's what their partner is for. Okay, so for example, the little visual here, so you're going to have one book and two readers. So everybody's going to be in a pair. And then, of course, one person's going to read, one person's going to listen, and then they try to read it together, and then they reread it and reread it. And that builds fluency, is practicing it over and over. And, one time somebody asked me, it's like, well, are they just memorizing it? And, they're not really learning the words. Well, if they have that decoding skill, then it's not necessarily a memorization, but it becomes a sight word. So any word that you can look at and read it by sight without having to decode it is technically a sight word. Okay, and it's not necessarily a memorization, but kind of. I mean, it kind of is. But if you have that decoding strategy, then you're not relying solely on memorization. Does that make sense? Because us as readers, we're going to look and we can see we don't have to decode all of those. And I guess, so anyway, all right, so what you do, and you would pair up. So with this one, you can, depending on your students, you can do a random, number your students off. Or with this one, you would want to probably pick a child that has a little bit better reading ability than the other one to assist and build that confidence for the one that's not as high or that's not as fluent as their partner. But and then you're going to have students that may be on equal levels, and that's fine too. So just depending on your kids, so you're going to pair them up and then have them read. So as we're reading, so we have one text and two readers. So this is our book, and then what we're going to do first is you would let the student with the higher reading ability read first, because what that does is it models for that student that has difficulty, and also what it does is it provides that student that is listening, they're going to already have one read already. So if they follow along, they're going to see those words and hear those words for them. So they already have that, they've heard it one time already. And so they may not have the fluency, but they at least know the words. So what you're going to do is you're going to read. Okay. Now, even though the student has the lower reading ability, they're still going to be that partner because they're still helping. She's helping me, and I'm going to help her as well. And if you notice, they say a ghost partner. So what happens is sometimes you're going to be, as a teacher, you're going to have to go and whisper into that kid's ear on help them what to look for, because they're not going to know at the beginning. Okay. And then you go down to the prompts, and it tells you what you can say to guide those students. So for example, if I'm reading Alex and Amanda's first concert, and the most popular teen band was coming to town, and both Alex. So as you see that, then as a teacher, then you can come by and she's going to whisper to Dion because I'm reading to her. So I'm listening to Dion reading, or I'm listening to myself read. I'm the other person. I need a third person, but so I'm listening to that other person read. So I'm going to go and whisper to the partner. And I could say things and it tells you, it's like, so you're listening to how they read. So then you can say, okay, so I was really I didn't really miss any words, but I wasn't reading it real fluently. So what I could go is I could say, tell your partner, go back and try that again. So, because I did it, I just wasn't real sure about them. So I could whisper to Dion and say, tell your partner. And so Dion knows, so she's going to feel confident. So she's going to tell me,
Chastity, do you mind to read that again?
okay, and so me as a reader, then I'm going to go back. Okay, so I've already read it once. So then I was like, okay, the most popular teen band was coming to town. So then you're going the second time, and they do get it better because they've already heard it. Okay, and then you do that for a little bit, and then you switch partners and let the other person read, and then the same thing. So you're kind of going around monitoring and just picking up. So a couple of things is going on. You get to hear your child read, your student read out loud, and they're not necessarily reading to you because, as you know, if you have a group of even 4 and you've only got 30 minutes, it's hard to hear each of them read individually. But if you've got them reading out loud in the partner and you're walking around your room, this gives you an opportunity to be able to hear them and also give feedback for that partner, and that builds confidence for that partner. But and not only are they hearing you say it, they give that guidance to their other partner, and then they're going to know when it's their turn what to look for. Okay, so you guys, y'all can just pair up somehow. You two, maybe you two can pair up, and I'm going to give you guys. We'll start with maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes is enough. 7. Let's do 7 minutes. And then I'm going to just let you guys practice what we talked about, and just you know, 1 and 2, just y'all switch when you think it's ready. So, you know, just switch roles. So we'll start with 7 minutes. Okay, we are going to go ahead. I hope that you guys in the virtual had an opportunity. I don't know if you had somebody that you can practice with, but you kind of looked through it and kind of got an idea of how this strategy would work. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
One of the good things that I heard you all have a conversation was about leveled readers or the level of reading. So this strategy could be adapted to different grade level or level ability. Because I heard you all have a conversation about those kids that are struggling and maybe they only read at kindergarten level, or they're just doing letters and sounds. But how you can adapt those activities, you know, and you look at the text, you get to choose the text that they're reading. And so that's the benefit of those resources, is that, you know, it can apply to whatever level. If you're reading some text at the 8th grade level versus if you're reading something at the kindergarten level, you have that ability to choose the text and then just use the strategy. So that's a good thing.
Like with the decodable readers, I've got one that, like the word mat, he'll sound it out, but then he goes to blend it, he'll flip the beginning and ending called pan. So like working with, like having someone else sit there and like read it for him would help him with that maybe.
At this level,
Is it kindergarten?
if you are wanting him to read that word correctly himself, I don't think reading it to him will help, because what you're doing is creating a dependency for somebody reading it to him. You know, that's an accommodation like that they need, and depending on the situation, sometimes they need to be read to for whatever, but in order to teach them how to read it, probably not reading to him. But that is where, if they're doing the flipping, that's when those multi-sensory strategies would come into play, where they can, you know, if you might have some the blocks or the sand or something like that they can move, or the finger tapping and some representation. On the blocks, you can put like letters on the blocks, and then if they see that it's manipulated, and also like with the blending board, so if they're seeing And you, so what you're saying is he'll go, app Pam. Is that what he's doing?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you just kind of, that it's a directionality, app, and then that motion, map, and go, and then if he says, app Pam, okay, so what is the beginning sound? And then go through that. And I think, you know, eventually just giving those supports he will fix that.
Okay.
I mean, if you keep practicing on having those, and like those, I think the Elkonin boxes will also help, because it shows if you have that letter placement, because in kindergarten, so they're seeing the letter, they have the letter there. So if they see that letter is at the beginning and the P is at the end, then, you know, it's like, okay, the beginning sound, and you may have to even back up a little bit if he's having difficulty in flipping. You may have to go back and to just identifying the first initial sound. So like, you know, and that goes back to that phonemic awareness, even, you know, like we talk about that pillar that below the phonics. So his phonemic awareness is maybe a little bit weak because he's blending sounds, he's capable, but in reality, he's having a hard time distinguishing what he hears at the beginning and at the end. Like he's saying it, but to truly understand it. So what I would do is back up, and this could be like a part of maybe an RTI or just like a SDI, if he's, you know, one just real quick refresher on, okay, let me give you some words. I want to say these words. What sound do you hear at the beginning?
Okay.
And refresh it. And then I would start at the beginning sounds and then say, okay, what sound do you hear at the end? So, and if it's, does he do it with all or just like M and P?
With most of his words.
Okay, so it's all of them. So I would just give a list of words. Hat, what's the beginning sound? You know, in this case, and then not necessarily, you don't even have to stay with word families. You can say bit for the next one and just see if he identifies those beginning sounds first, and then do a list and can he identify the ending sounds and see that. I think that would be interesting to see if he can do that. And then if he can, then you can move on to be like, okay, let's blend and let's pray. And then as a reminder, okay, you're saying Pam, but when you say Matt, what's the beginning sound that you hear? And then talking through that and see. And let me know.
Okay.
Because, but I'm guessing it's that piece of that lower level. That's a good question. Thank you for that. Anything else before we move on? Okay, so our next one is vocabulary or word choice. So with this one, I have it, the word choice in parentheses because as our pillar, it's a reading component of vocabulary. And then going into our writing, it falls under word choice. So that's why I have those two there. So this one is actually in your writing book. And I tried to do, you know, like if you notice it, the activities on page 279, the levels is for 3 through 8. So like I said earlier, you can take any writing and use this, but it's geared for, you know, your target is 3 through 8. And the reason is, you know, probably just the length, the fluency piece of it and the length, because, so what we're doing with this one is words to eliminate repetition. So what this does, going back to what I said earlier about kids using stuff and things, you know, instead of being specific, then this is what we want to try to eliminate. It makes their writing richer and it builds that vocabulary. And then if they learn new words, then it's going to increase their reading comprehension when they read those new vocabulary words in different contexts. So what you would do is with this strategy is they would have students, it depends on your class and your students. What would ideally would be is if students could take their own writing and be able to, I don't want to use the word critique it really, but if they're able to take their own writing and work through these. So with this, then let me give you an idea of what this would look like. So I would pair these up because especially at the beginning, if this is the first time that you're going to introduce this, kids are going to need some help. So I would put this in pair them up. And for this particular writing, and I'm just going to use the one in the book just because I don't want to take one of your all's examples in your writing. For example, this one, you can see it says make your writing colorful. Okay, so you can make this as a chart as well, or you can have your students make up one. So they use the word God. So I'm going to use, let's just do things. Okay, so on your chart, you can make it as fun, as however you want to design it. It's yours, it's your students. So we're going to say make your writing colorful, and then you're just going to and then they identify, they call it a white word. Because, the color is, is the absence of color, it'd be kind of bland or kind of boring. Okay, so let's just use things. So that things is going to be our white word. And say a student was talking about going, so say it's spring. A lot of people have had spring break recently. So let's just say that you gave them a journal entry on what they did over spring break. Okay. And so if you want, like they've made a little rainbow, you don't have to, you can make a chart if you want to make it organized. So let's say instead of things, let's be a little bit more specific. So what can we say instead of things? What would make it more interesting? Okay, you went to Florida and did different things. Okay, what are some of those? What did you do exactly? Okay, well, we went to eat. Okay, what did you eat? Did you eat dinner? Did you eat breakfast? Okay, we got ice cream. Okay, so instead of things, then we ate ice cream. And then you might want to repeat it back to them. Say, okay, so if I was reading your journal entry and you said, I went to Florida and we did things. Okay, so what? But if you said, we went to Florida and we ate ice cream. And then it's like, oh, well, Florida's hot. Then your reader is picturing. So you talk that through with them when you have that conference. So you're letting them know, okay, so if you tell your reader you had ice cream, then it's probably, and they're using their background knowledge. Florida's usually hot. You ate ice cream, so it was probably hot that day specifically, things like that. What else did you do? Okay, we went to the beach. So it just helps them specifically what they did, and it gets their mind thinking. And then, so beach. Okay, so then you just talk that through with them. Now, if they work in groups, then you can kind of, for example, if it was my writing and I said I went to Florida and Tab was my partner. And so I tell Tab, I said, we went to Florida and we did things. And then, so Tab's gonna be like, well, okay, what did you do? So you can incorporate conversation with your partner, encourage those students to ask each other more specific questions on what that is. Okay, this one, so they use the word got. Okay, I got this, I bought this, so instead of using got every time, they use the word bought or received. So it gets them thinking, because you don't want to have the same word dot all the way through your writing. It's for obvious reasons. That's just not good writing, and we won't get into that. But so in order to help the kids on doing better with that, of course, with our kids, they have a hard time coming up with different words than God, or they would have put them in there. So being able to provide them with like a thesaurus or if they have, if you have an iPad or something that have this thesaurus on the app, just something that they can look it up and come up with new words. And then they're going to put it on their chart paper. Just pick a word in there that's repeated. And maybe just put that word at the top and then write some synonyms on your chart that they could say instead. Okay, so just real quick, what did you guys come up with in sharing on yours? Well, just real quick, just a couple of things. What did you find?
So this one, they repeated the word responsibility and the word people, like a lot. And so we just got some examples of other words.
What's a couple of words instead of people? What's some other words that you all come up with?
Folks, workers, employees.
Perfect. What about responsibility? What did you guys come up with?
Duties, tasks, assignments.
Perfect. Yes. Good job. Good job, guys.
Good job.
And just because the title was responsibility, that doesn't mean that they have to use that same word. So that you found some synonyms that mean the same thing. Good job. Perfect. All right, you guys, what you got?
So in ours, they use the word so, like, multiple times. So we found other words that they could replace so with. And one of the sentences was, once there was a very lonely girl, so she went to find someone to play with. Instead of so, we said ain't. And then she goes to the lost and found, and so she takes what she found and lost and found home with her. And she said so again. So we said then she took the stuff, the thing to the lost and found. So we just got other words to replace so it's not repeated so many times.
Good job. And it seems like maybe, so it's a transition thing also. So that, there, now you, I'm saying so. Oh, gosh. But yeah, so you got your transition words. And then also with some of those, it may be, you could find even elimination of some of those also.
Yeah.
And just depends, not all of them, obviously. But yeah, good job. Good job, guys, on that. Any questions or comments on that? Did you guys, do you like that one? Do you think that would be beneficial? There's also some in here too. It's called precise nouns and then precise verbs. So it's kind of the same idea, but it focuses on noun specific verbs and things like that. And it really enriches their vocabulary. Okay, I'm gonna, we got about 15 minutes and we do have one more, the reading comprehension. And I know this one's a big one. Comprehension is the most complex of all of them. And it's also the most difficult to teach, I think, out of all of them, because it's abstract. It's, comprehension it's an abstract concept. So with this one, we've got one last activity. It is about summarizing. And it is on page 136. And I chose this one, like I said, with comprehension, we could do key ideas and main idea and key details, different ones. And I did summarizing because I know a lot of times, students are asked to summarize text a lot. So, and this is in your reading strategies book, if I didn't specify, 136 in your reading strategy. And what our kids want to do is they want to just tell you everything that happened. It's not a summary. Anything they can remember, they tell you and they think that's their summary. So what this does is, like the title, it's what's most essential. So what we're teaching them is how to determine what's important and how to just tell them the key facts and put it into a summary. And I've made these, and Dion's handing these out. So if we, in those your little boxes, some materials, if we have time for you guys to make these, maybe you all can kind of work on it while I'm talking. But like this, and this would be like a graphic organizer that you can use as a reminder for the students. Depending on your level of students, you may have to make it for them, or you may want the students to make it themselves. It depends. So with this one, you have characters and setting at the front. And then when you lift it up, then it's just a little prompt. The characters are. So when they read a story or a passage, one of the important things, I'm gonna need to know the characters, okay? And I need to know the setting. The setting is. So those are two things I need to know to write my summary. And then you have these sections, beginning, middle, and end, B, M, and E, beginning, middle, and end. And then if you flip it down, it just says, in the beginning, it's just a sentence starter for them. In the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. Now, some of your kids, what you might have to do is put this, like, you can have this, but then you can also have a graphic organizer on a sheet of paper that has these filled in already, like a paragraph. The characters are, the setting is, and then have this. And then in the middle is just a couple reminders. Did you retell it in order? And did you use complete sentences? So those are just some key points when you didn't do a summary, because the order, of course, of events is important. They don't want to make sure they put what happened at the end, put it at the beginning. So it teaches organization, it teaches sequencing, and it also helps them to pick out what is important to provide a summary. What is this about? Also, if a kid can sum it up, what they've read in some simple words, that means they truly can understand it. If they are kind of just repeating the whole story, they're just repeating what the story says, that they're not really getting an understanding. One of the things I've heard that we've heard here a lot is, you make the complex simple. So if you can explain something simply, then you truly understand it. And that's the same thing when you're reading a passage. If you can pretty much just say, well, basically this is about, and just say it, then that helps with that comprehension. So this one, but you had the example, but I have this here if you want to do that. And I use the glue sticks. So you would have that, and this will be a scaffold for your kids. This is that they can hold it, they can use it as a reminder. And
To be an advanced organizer, a way to organize.
Yes.
To be a graphic organizer, when we talk about special design instruction.
Yes, absolutely. And then, of course, as that talk about that gradual release for our kids, when you can provide them all of these, and then you can, as they develop that skill, then you're going to take that away from them, because you don't want them going to be dependent on that all the time. But this is something that will help them be able to complete that task independently. So as you guys are making those, then I'll just talk it through a little bit. So sometimes we think details is important when you're summarizing. And if you're talking about a character, talking about the color of shirt that they had on may not be important if it doesn't have any effect on the story. So it kind of helps them do that. And then again, it goes down and you have these prompts. Sometimes you have kids, like I said, they want to tell you the whole story. So then a prompt, you can say, okay, can you say it a little bit shorter? Or you wrote 6 sentences. You wrote 3 things that happened at the beginning. So if they have been able to narrow it down to 3 sentences at the main beginning, then have them say, okay, let's read these together. Which one of these sentences would be the most important, that pretty much tells everything that would sum up the beginning? So let's just take, and for time's sake, I'm gonna go ahead and read it to you, and we'll talk about it while you put this together. So let's look at the first paragraph of Alex and Amanda's first concert. It says the most popular teen band was coming to town, and both Alex and his twin sister Amanda really wanted to go to the concert. They had never been to a concert because their parents' rule was that you must be in 6th grade to go to a concert. Alex and Amanda were only in 5th grade. So let's take that first paragraph And what would be a summary, like to summarize that first paragraph, what would you say that you could simply put in one sentence about the first paragraph? What's going on so far?
Alex, Amanda wanted to go to the concert.
They want to go to a concert. And sometimes they would, they might think it's important that they've never been before. And those are all details. It's kind of building up the suspense and the excitement of this concert. But when it comes down to it, the most important thing we need to know is Alex and Amanda wanted to go to a concert, period. Okay. Then we'll scoot on down to, like I said, this is kind of a long one, but
I was just thinking, if you created these volumes, you could do beginning, middle, and end with those story prompts, and you could have kids write on post-it notes, and you could use those over and over.
yes,
You know, in your class, they could just put in their desk or at their workspace, and they could go back, and every time you go through a story, you can go back and just do a little practice.
Yes.
A review with beginning, middle, and end. That'd be fun.
that is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, you could like, yeah, they could, and then they could write on the dry erase. The kids would love that. They could create their own design. I know everybody's kind of looks a little different. A little bit of pizzazz to some of them.
Absolutely, yes. So the big, and the going, and let's also, I picked summarizing because I think that is one of the most difficult things for our kids. Going back to that first paragraph, so we said going to the concert is the most important thing. Now, when they want to tell us about it's their first one and what grade they were in and what the rule was, those are all details. So talking them through those and having this, having those prompts, that helps them discern between what details are that adds to that main idea, which would be, because that's kind of thinking about you're doing the main idea of the beginning, the main idea of the middle, and the main idea of the end of the story, and that puts together your summary. Okay, so we're going to take the last couple minutes, just like we've talked about the different components, the 5 components or the 5 pillars of literacy, how those build on each other, how the reading and the writing tie together. We've talked about these different strategies and how to use those. So with all of that being said, I'm going to quit talking for just a second, let you guys think about what's one thing that you learned today that you're going to take away that you did not know when you walked in this room. And with these strategies, think about how you're going to implement these strategies in your classroom, and then what questions do you still have? So think about those 3 things just for a second. Does anybody want to share one thing that you have learned from today's session?
Make learning fun.
Hey,
No matter the grade level, we will be able to do any kind of activity.
and we're going to continue that on yours. That's a very good point. And sometimes you got to get creative on that. And then, like you said with yours, and I will say too, on that note, sometimes you have to kind of step out of your comfort zone. I mean, that's what, education's all about. You have to, you're learning, you're constantly learning. Even I learn daily, even with this. So, but you grow as a person, and then you can keep doing that, grow as an educator and as a teacher. So yeah, most definitely, you can always tweak it to fit the needs of your students. What questions do we still have? I know we went through this pretty quickly, but, and you may not even have questions right now. Sometimes you have to process it, and then you come back and then you're like, oh, okay, what was that? So sometimes that happens as well. So I do have here my email, because if you do get back to school and you have questions or comments or anything, do not hesitate to email me. And if I don't know, I will consult and find it and get back to you on that. Because we want to do anything that we can to help make your job easier and help you help those students that you have in your care every single day. This is all that I have for you guys today. I really appreciate you all.